Class is now in session. I'm Professor Hockey, and today we'll be discussing some exciting news coming out of the San Jose Sharks camp today, and that is that they have recalled defenseman Shakir Mukhamadullin from the San Jose Barracuda. This is pretty similar to a move that the Sharks made a few months ago when they recalled Henry Thrun from the San Jose Barracuda, and he has managed to maintain a long-term spot with the San Jose Sharks roster since that point. While I don't know if Mukhamadullin will have that same luxury, there is at the very least an opportunity to play in the Sharks' main lineup for the foreseeable future due to a couple of reasons. The first of which is that the Sharks are still dealing with a couple of defensive injuries, first of which to Jacob McDonald, but of course also, more importantly, to Ty Emberson and Mario Ferraro. But also, even if you just take a look at the Sharks' top six defensemen in their previous game against the New York Rangers, there are a couple of names that Mukhamadullin could replace. The first of which would be Henry Thrun, not for any sort of performance issues, but instead because Thrun did sustain an injury near the end of the third period of that game, and while he would return for a shift in overtime, since then we have learned that there is at least some sort of nagging injury there, and if he is not 100% healthy for the upcoming Saturday game, there is very little reason to actually ice him in the lineup. The Sharks are not playing for anything. He's still a very young and promising player that you don't want to risk aggravating a potential issue there and keeping him out even longer term, so why not let him rest up a couple of games, perhaps even the entirety of the post-All-Star game break where the Sharks will be not playing a game for an entire 2-week period, and give Mukhamadullin that chance. But even if Thrun maintains a spot in the lineup, there is still definitely a potential opening, and that would come through Addison once again being a healthy scratch. Ever since being acquired from the Minnesota Wild a few months ago, Addison just has not been good for the San Jose Sharks. He was advertised as a defenseman who may not be very good defensively, but provides a good offensive element to a team, could be a power play option as well for the San Jose Sharks. And while he has come half as advertised, it is the bad half that has really been apparent for Addison. He is not good defensively as was said, but he hasn't been providing anything offensively either. So in fact, he's just been a negative performer for the San Jose Sharks pretty much the entirety of this season. So it is very difficult to imagine that Shakir Mukhamadullin could be much worse than what Addison was providing. And what is also very interesting with Mukhamadullin is that currently the San Jose Sharks power play, especially with the absence of Mikael Granlund, is running with a 5-forward unit. And with no Mikael Granlund there isn't even that pseudo power play defenseman quarterback player on that 5-man unit. And we saw against the Rangers just how bad the Sharks power play was because of that. And so while Mukhamadullin, you may not think he's ready to run a number one power play unit, and he very well may not be, this is still a chance. There is very much an opening to get him on that top power play unit and see what he can do with that opportunity. So that could also be a very interesting choice. Now, the reason why I say Mukhamadullin may not be a long-term option for the San Jose Sharks like Henry Thrun was, is that once we do get past that All-Star break, that 2 weeks off, it is very likely that most, if not all, of the San Jose Sharks defensemen will be healthy at that point, and you can imagine there are a few players that already have like a guaranteed spot in the lineup. Mario Ferraro, Jan Ruda, of course, Henry Thrun, I would imagine as well. Marc-Edouard Vlasic, he's been much better over these last couple of weeks, so I would imagine David Quinn would favor him over other players just because of that veteran aspect. And Ty Emberson, while he has been injured for a good chunk of this season, when healthy, has been quite a good player for the San Jose Sharks, meaning there really is only one empty slot that Mukhamadullin could go for, and already you could imagine David Quinn might favor players like Kyle Burroughs or Nikita Hotyuk for that last spot. However, having said that, at the very least, it is still going to be fun to see him, if it's even just for a couple of games, maybe the 3 games prior to the big All-Star break, and we shall see how he does. The other point that I want to make here has to do with when the Sharks acquired Shakir Mukhamadullin, which we're almost coming up on the 1-year anniversary of that Timo Meier trade, and at the time, the trade was relatively underwhelming. It was a first-round pick that for the Devils was likely going to be late in the first round, and that ended up being the case. Mukhamadullin, while a good prospect, was not one of the better prospects for the New Jersey Devils compared to like Alexander Holtz or perhaps even the real big pipe dreams of getting like a Luke Hughes or a Simon Nemec. Mukhamadullin was kind of like 4th or 5th on the depth charts at that point. And then Fabian Zetterlund, who was likely the player to provide the most immediate impact to the San Jose Sharks, had a really, really awful 20-game stint at the end of that season. And so it felt as though that immediately that Timo Meier trade was a bit of a failure for San Jose. But over this year, it has turned things around and actually been a pretty big steal for the San Jose Sharks. Not only has Fabian Zetterlund undergone a massive improvement to at this point been one of the better forwards for the San Jose Sharks season, and as well one of the biggest surprises for the San Jose Sharks this season. On top of that, with that 26th, I believe, overall pick, the San Jose Sharks selected Quinton Musty, who ended up being one of the better steals of the first round draft, as he is now second in points per game in the entire OHL, which is an extremely impressive feat. And now we will be able to see what Shakir Mukhamadullin can do in his first career NHL games. This is definitely looking much better for San Jose, and not to sort of pour gasoline on the fire, but if we take a look at the other side here, where the Devils acquired Timo Meier, he has not been very good this season. In fact, Fabian Zetterlund actually has more points than Meier does at this point. He does have more games played, so that could obviously have something to do with it, but still, Meier was expected to be this exceptionally dominant forward, and he is. We know he is capable of that, but perhaps it's a coincidence if we take a look at the past with the San Jose Sharks. When Meier signed that 4-year, $6 million per year deal, the first couple of seasons of that contract, he was not very good at all. And it was only the last couple of seasons, perhaps because he was coming up to his next big deal, that he suddenly became that exceptionally dominant forward that he was with San Jose. Now, in the first year of this big contract of like $9 million, he's not been very good with New Jersey. Again, could be a coincidence, but perhaps there is some sort of pattern there. And so at this point, I imagine with how solid Zetterlund has been looking with the Sharks, and with how solid Quinton Musty has been looking in the junior leagues, and Mukhamadullin's been pretty good with the Barracuda, this is looking like a very solid move for Mike Grier. And generally, it's going to be very exciting to see what Mukhamadullin can do, even if it's just for a short time frame. Class dismissed.